This is TWiT.
In the show notes, I gave the title of this next bit of news the title, Wow, Just Wow. Because it tells the story of something that's so utterly violating of consumer rights and privacy that it needed that title. The headline in last week's New York Times read, Automakers are sharing consumers' driving behavior with insurance companies. And the subhead read, LexisNexis, which generates consumer risk profiles for insurers, knew about every trip GM drivers had taken in their cars, including when they sped, braked too hard, or accelerated rapidly. Okay, wow. So it's astonishing.
Yeah, wow.
Here's I know, exactly. Here's the real-world event that the New York Times used to frame their disclosure. They wrote, Ken Dahl says, that's not D-O-L-L, that's D-A-H-L, and it's K-E-N-N. Ken Dahl says he has always been a careful driver. The owner of a software company near Seattle, he drives a leased Chevrolet Bolt. He's never been responsible for an accident. So Mr. Dahl, at age 65, was surprised in 2022 when the cost of his car insurance jumped by 21%. Quotes from other insurance companies were also high. One insurance agent told him his LexisNexis report was a factor. LexisNexis, they write, is a New York-based global data broker with a risk solutions division that caters to the auto insurance industry and has traditionally kept tabs on car accidents and tickets. Okay, right. Public record things, right? I mean, like accidents and tickets, that's out there. Upon Mr. Dahl's request, LexisNexis sent him a 258-page consumer disclosure report, which it must provide per the Fair Credit Reporting Act. What it contained stunned him. More than 130 pages detailing each time he or his wife had driven the Bolt over the previous 6 months. It included the dates of 640 trips, their start and end times, the distance driven, and an accounting of any speeding, hard braking, or sharp accelerations. The only thing it didn't have is where they had driven the car. On a Thursday morning in June, for example, the car had been driven 7.33 miles in 18 minutes. There had been 2 rapid accelerations and 2 incidents of hard braking. According to the report, the trip details had been provided by General Motors, the manufacturer of the Chevy Bolt. Lexis analyzed that driving data to create a risk score, quote, for insurers to use as one factor of many to create more personalized insurance coverage, according to a LexisNexis spokesman, Dean Carney. 8 insurance companies had requested information about Mr. Dahl from LexisNexis over the previous month. Mr. Dahl said it felt like a betrayal. They're taking information that I didn't realize was going to be shared and screwing with our insurance. Okay, now, since this behavior is so horrifying, I'm going to share a bit more of what the New York Times wrote. They said, in recent years, insurance companies have offered incentives to people who install dongles in their cars or download smartphone apps that monitor their driving, including how much they drive, how fast they take corners, how hard they hit the brakes, and whether they speed. But, quote, Ford Motor put it, drivers are historically reluctant to participate in these programs. And this occurred. This was written in a patent application that describes what is happening instead. Quote, car companies are collecting information directly from internet-connected vehicles for use by the insurance industry. In other words, monetizing, right? Because you know the insurance industry is paying to receive that information. So another means by which today's consumer is being monetized without their knowledge. New York Times says sometimes this is happening with a driver's awareness and consent. Car companies have established relationships with insurance companies so that if drivers want to sign up for what's called usage-based insurance, where rates are set based on monitoring of their habits, it's easy to collect that data wirelessly from their cars. But in other instances, something much sneakier has happened. Modern cars are internet-enabled, allowing access to services like navigation, roadside assistance, and car apps that drivers can connect to their vehicles to locate them or unlock them remotely. In recent years, automakers, including GM, Honda, Kia, and Hyundai, have started offering optional features in their connected car apps that rate people's driving. Some drivers may not realize that if they turn on these features, the car companies then give information about how they drive to data brokers like LexisNexis. And again, not give, sell. Automakers and data brokers that have partnered to collect detailed driving data from millions of Americans say they have drivers' permission to do so. But the existence of these partnerships is nearly invisible to drivers whose consent is obtained in fine print and murky privacy policies that few ever read. Especially troubling is that some drivers with vehicles made by GM say they were tracked even when they did not turn on the feature called OnStar Smart Driver, and that their insurance rates went up as a result.
So I do have a problem with that last bit. Because someone says that, I almost wish that there was some due diligence there. I'm sure you've seen it. Somebody's having an issue, a tech issue, and you say, oh, here's how you fix it. And they say, I've done that. And then you go and check and they didn't do that thing that you told them to do and that they should have done it.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised that they did accidentally opt in, but all that's to say, whether you opt in or not, this is still something that should be brought to light. And as for all of it, especially if it's kind of being put forth as an idea of here are these cool features you get, and secretly underneath what it's doing is giving access. Yeah, that's bad. I don't know if I like that from the New York Times there at the end.
Well, so one analogy that occurs to me is how. And we mentioned this a number of times in prior years during the podcast, is employees in an organization sometimes believe that what they do on their corporate computer is private, is like their business. Mm-hmm. And even when the employee agreement and occasional reminder meetings and so forth say that's not the case. That this is a corporate network, corporate bandwidth, a corporate computer, and what you do is owned by the company. So we have suggested that really ought to be on a label running across the top of their monitor.
Yes.
Like it literally ought to say right in front of them, please remember that everything you do on this computer, which is owned by the company, on the bandwidth owned by the company, and the data owned by the company, is not private.
Right.
Similarly, by analogy, the screens that all these computers have, imagine if they said along the bottom, your driving is being monitored by the company you purchased this from and is being sold to your car insurance provider.
They don't want to do that, Steve.
Obviously, we're never going to see that.
Yeah.
But but that's the point, is that this is going on surreptitiously, and it being surreptitious is clearly wrong. So anyway, stepping back, from the specifics of this particularly egregious behavior, add the context of Tim Berners-Lee's unhappiness with what the web has become, and the growing uneasiness over the algorithms being used by social media companies to enhance their own profits, even when those profits come at the cost of the emotional and mental health of their own users. We see example after example of amoral, aggressive profiteering by major enterprises, where the operative philosophy appears to be, we'll do this to make as much money as we can, no matter who is hurt, until the governments in whose jurisdictions we're operating get around to creating legislation which specifically prohibits our conduct. But until that happens, we'll do everything we can to fight against those changes, including, where possible, lobbying those governmental legislators.
Honestly, we could just take that text and slap it on the screen anytime we talk about any antitrust legislation across any of our shows, and that perfectly sums up exactly what's going on in every single case.
It's like make us stop.
Yeah, exactly. We did.
And until you do, we're going to use every clever means we have of profiting from every area in which we have not been made to stop. There's no more morality. There's no more ethics. Mm-hmm. It's profit wherever possible.
Profit. Yeah.
And that is exactly Tim Berners-Lee's complaint. And it's never going to change. Because it's just too pervasive, right? I mean, it's just, and again, as a consequence of this, the internet is largely free. And I think that's a trade-off most people would choose to make, rather than having to pay, remember that there was early talk about micropayments, where when you went to a website, it would, ding you some fraction of a something or other. And that would make people very uncomfortable. They'd be like, well, wait a minute, suddenly links are not free to click on.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a cost to clicking on that link.
How many times per month should I click on this? And then you've got, you're telling your kids, don't click on links, and it would just completely reshape everything. And then there would be so many, I can't imagine how much more money and time would have to go into customer support, because someone would click on a link and then say, I'm not satisfied with this page, and I don't want to have paid for this page because I didn't get the answer I wanted.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point, because right now it's like, well, it's free, so, go pound salt somewhere, It's like tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, again, I don't mean to be just simply complaining, because I also recognize, as I said, this is why the web is here. I mean, I was present during pre-web, during the early days, and when there was not much on the net, and the question was, well, why is anyone going to put anything on the internet? Because there's nobody on the internet to go see it. Mm-hmm. So there was this chicken and egg problem, right? No one's at no vast population are actually going onto the internet to do anything. So why is anyone going to put anything there? And if no one puts anything there, then no one is going to be incentivized to go and get what's not there. So it happened anyway. And the way it's evolved, as I said, I'm actually not complaining. This is not this sounds like I'm, doing some holier than thou rant. It's not the case. I like it the way it is. And those of us who are clever enough to mitigate the tracking that's being done and the monetizing of ourselves, well, we get the benefit that is being reaped by all those who aren't. So it works.
Hey, it's Leo Laporte. I hope you've enjoyed this little snippet from Security Now. If you want the whole show, you can get it at our website, twit.tv/SN. Of course, you can subscribe to Security Now on your favorite podcast, or just click one of the links below.